If you're not familiar with the story Jesus told of the rich man and Lazarus, then please listen to the Bible reading in this playlist first. In the story of the rich man and Lazarus, Jesus taught the people that if they hear not Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. Then he went on to prove that truth with the resurrection of his friend Lazarus, who had literally died. Raising Lazarus from the dead was the ultimate proof that Jesus was truly the Son of God. And yet, that very proof was the reason the priests and rulers decided to kill both Jesus and Lazarus. We read of that in John 12, verses 9 to 11. Much people came not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death, because that by reason of him many of the Jews went away and believed on Jesus. The point of the parable that Jesus taught about the rich man and Lazarus was that it is only in this life that we can choose heaven or hell. There won't be a second opportunity after death. And while in the story the rich man dies and ends up in hell, it was not to be taken as a teaching on what happens at death. That understanding does not harmonize with the abundance of verses in the Bible that teaches otherwise. It is important to understand that Jesus was not teaching what happens at death as much as using this graphic story to teach important truths. This is why Abraham told the rich man that his brothers have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. When Jesus spoke of Moses and the prophets, he was talking only about the Old Testament scriptures. The New Testament was not written until Jesus had died, was resurrected, and went to heaven. In Moses and the prophets, it does not teach an eternally burning hell or that people go to hell immediately at death. Here's a brief summary of what it says in Moses and the prophets. The dead know not anything, for in death there is no remembrance of thee, that is of God. In the grave, who shall give thee thanks? The dead praise not the Lord. In that very day of his death his thoughts perish. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, that is, at the resurrection. And we find agreement with the New Testament writers. It says, all that are in the grave shall hear his voice, and the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. In Moses and the prophets, it tells us that hell is in the future. The day cometh that shall burn as an oven. The day that cometh shall burn them up. Will you believe Moses and the prophets? If you don't believe, then you would not have believed when Jesus' friend Lazarus did come back from the dead. There is no account of him talking about having been in heaven. Can you imagine how sad it would be if Lazarus was indeed in heaven and had to come back to this earth to die a second time? Jesus said that Lazarus was sleeping when he was dead. Also, the Apostle Peter said that King David is both dead and buried, and his sepulcher is with us unto this day. He even goes further to say David is not ascended into the heavens. If King David is not in heaven, why would we think that Lazarus was there? The fact that Jesus said Abraham's bosom is a big clue that it is an allegory. The use of allegory is found in other scriptures. For example, the prophet Nathan told King David a similar story about a rich man and a poor man in 2 Samuel chapter 12. The purpose of the allegory is to make a broader and more important point. No one would accuse the prophet Nathan of lying because the meaning and purpose of the story would be understood. Yeshua employed a similar method in telling the rich man, poor man story, emphasizing the point that 1, we have only this life to choose where we will spend eternity, and 2, we should believe and obey the Old Testament scriptures, that is, Moses and the prophets. If you would like to know more about having a relationship with the Lord Jesus, please watch my video, How to Live Forever. Thank you for watching. God bless you.